Done. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday book launch. We've already had a lovely time together. Lots of fun glitches. Malika Albrecht. I'm the founding editor of Redheaded Stepchild, and we are celebrating a dear friend to everybody present today, Marty Silverthorne. And this was the collected poems that Marcia really was the driving force behind. And some of the dearest and most fabulous poets are here tonight to read some of Marty's poems. And I thought rather than giving him a bio, I would love to hear a Marty story from each of y'all, if you feel so inclined, that would kind of add to a bio or a fuller picture, more than words on the back of a book, kind of a living, I don't know, moment of celebration of Marty the human and Marty the poet. I am going to turn it over super quickly. We're just going to take the same list that's in the chat section that Deborah put in there for us, because it'll be easiest for us to kind of follow, and I will spotlight you. I just want to thank everybody for being here, taking time out of your schedule to do this, and I am looking forward to being in your good company. Thank y'all. Marcia, that means you're up, so I'm gonna spotlight you.
Did you want me to say something?
Yes, you are going to be reading the poem and then also maybe giving a piece of bio for Marty.
Yeah, a little bit of bio, which is Marty was on. Am I doing it right?
Probably people should mute at this point if they're not speaking.
Yeah, we might have an echo that reason. Marcia, can you unmute? We're going to need you unmuted.
Okay. Does that work?
You're good.
Okay. So Marty was on my board of directors at the Writers Network, and at my house we could have meetings, and my front door was accessible, so I could get his wheelchair into my house, which is where I had the Writers Network for 18 months. But then we got White Cross School, and I said, well, Marty, we could just continue to meet at my house. And he said, or we could make White Cross School accessible. And it was just so Marty. And he taught us so many things about ADA compliance. And so I got a grant from the State Arts Council. We built a ramp. We got permission from the owners of the school. And so we made a ramp, and by golly, Marty would come to meetings there. So it just tells us what we've learned from Marty along the way. Am I still on?
Yes, you sure are. Thank you,
Okay,
Marcia.
I'm gonna read one of my favorite poems. And I met this young woman who worked for Marty. I wish I could tell you her name. And when Sylvia passed away and we were at the funeral, this woman was there dabbing Marty's eyes. He was so sad. Of course, we were all so sad. And then Marty told me later that this is the woman he called Black Angel. Black Angel and her on-time Jesus come early every morning, snuff tucked in her jaw, praise fresh on her tongue, smile ivory sunshine when she works up a healing lather over broken bones. Black Angel brushes teeth to shine like Bible silver. Soap covers scarred arms she inherited from husbands who believed bruising was love. Weather will not stop Black Angel from coming in early, prayers on her tongue, hymns singing in her dark eyes. She measures medicine to ease crippled pain, says God is good with conviction, works up a sermon in her second lather.
Ooh, thank you, Marcia. I'm so glad you chose that one. Richard, I'm coming to you, and I'm gonna spotlight you.
Okay, a few years ago, J.K. Press decided there are poets who were really good that didn't really receive the accolades that they should. And so we decided we're going to give an Unsung Poet Award out, and Marty was unanimous choice for the first one for that award. So we had, we were producing a broadside, and I'm going to read from that. Marty chose the poem, and we're going to do a presentation at ECU. John Hoppenthal was very instrumental in helping us arrange that. Prior to this all coming to fruition, I decided to take a trip to the beach to visit Marty, Peter McCook, and Michael White. And I get to Marty's, and it happened to be the day that was his first night that he was spending alone without an aide. And I thought, oh, well, how do you feel? How do you feel about this? You okay? And he said, yeah, you got to do it sometime, what's the big deal? And he just did not, he wasn't concerned about that. Even though it was his first night, he owned that it was a little bit strange and nervous, but he wanted to do what he always did when he got with Marty, just talk about poetry. And so he spent about, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours there just talking about poetry. And I think people didn't really realize how widely read and how insightful his reading was of other poets. Some people, myself also at first, were reluctant to spend a lot of time with him. They didn't know how, and I think it's always been amazing to me, his knowledge that he had that so many people didn't get the opportunity to share with him. And the other thing from the story, of course, is this absolute insistence on, I'm not going to worry. I'm not going to stress. I'm going to do what I want to do, where I find my joy. So this poem, I'll see it. You probably can't see it very well. This is the broadside. Yeah, you can never figure out how to center these. Okay, and it's called Living Will. Take my eyes and all they have seen, my heart and its map of scars. Liver burned by bourbon, but no bones or tendons, please. My ears can't stand the scalpel's scraping. Fold my narrow feet, skinned knees, hyperextended hips into the scavenger's bucket. Let the hollows that were my eyes stray south, crooked nose sniff for spring, dry lips kiss winter's dying goodbye. Put my bucket of body on a fire and pour the ashes into an urn. Ride them in a sidecar out Old 64, across Sweetwater Creek, up 171 through the tree farm, past Rosemallow, cattails, and swamp water. Or head out 125 where my family was born and died, through Poplar Point, over Whitley's Bridge. Burn the air with my body, scatter me around bell-bottomed cypress and river branch, then suicide shift past the Slade farm with slave chains jingle under the chill white light of the moon. And that was our first and last Unsung Poet Award. We retired it after that.
I think that's fitting for Marty. And that poem, I always am blown away hearing it. Thank you so much for choosing it, Richard. And I love the broadside.
Beautiful.
It really is. John, I'm coming to you. I love the poems that people chose. It just thrilled me. Gotcha. Awesome, John. Thank you.
There we go. So thanks for having me here. I came to ECU in 2007, and I don't know exactly when I first met Marty, but knowing Marty, it probably was soon after I arrived, because he would home in on anything poetry anywhere he could possibly get to, and was a voracious reader. And every event we had at ECU, there was Marty. Every event I went to in the community in Little Washington, where I lived for a while, Marty seemed to be always there. And if I could choose a colleague to have at ECU, Marty would be someone I would love to have as a colleague. Just for his amazing interest, and as somebody else mentioned, how much he knew about poetry. At a certain point, I can't remember exactly when, maybe it was like 2014 or so, Marty asked me to look at a sheaf of poems that he was creating a chapbook, and I was happy to do that. And we met in the lounge of the English department at ECU on the second floor there, and I made some suggestions, and that sheaf of poems became a chapbook called Holy Ghost of Whiskey that I later blurbed for him. He asked me to blurb it, And it contains, probably my favorite Marty poem, not in small part because it's set at Alex Albright's R.A. Fountain store. But it's just a terrific poem. And so that's what I'm going to read. Getting the Holy Ghost at R.A. Fountain. Daddy's dead, but not tonight off exit 63 at R.A. Fountain General Store, reared back in an old church pew. Stage lights fall on empty mics, upright piano, thumping bass. The steel picks up, rings around the general store, in and out of a nail keg, across worn frets of a ladder back. The young crooner cries, waltz across Texas. Daddy dances in the Sea of Galilee. Mama puts her foot and hums, pats her foot and hums. The tenor sets A-cuff, speckled bird flying. Daddy can't be held down by dirt, runs the aisles in R.A. Fountain, dances with axe, maul, handsaws. It's Mama's music too. The young boy pulls his hat off, slicks back black hair. He's Elvis turning a hymn into a hunk of heaven. Mama rises from the pew, shouts, "Who are these children bringing the dead out of the dark? They must be Moses' children, freeing us from our own Folsom." The spotlight falls on mics at rest after waltzing Luke the Drifter over oiled hardwood. Daddy came back from the drink box with a Coke, Tom's Peanuts, a cone of hand-churned chocolate ice cream for Mama. He dropped peanuts down the slender neck of the bottle, baptizing them in dark syrup. Mama savored chocolate from the cone. If Mama's heart had windows, you'd see a house of broken panes. Daddy and Mama raised their hands, grasping a lifeline, a saint pulling them into salvation as if they saw the light and were lifted on the wings of a snow white dove. Thanks.
Yes. Oh, I think that Marty must be so happy hearing all these. Oh, that's so good. So good. Thank you. Deborah, I'm coming to you. Thank you for putting, there's a link to the book if you don't already have it, that Deborah put in the chat section. There you are.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I met Marty, like I met so many and many people that are here through the Writers Network, I guess in late 80s. And one thing I remember about him is that, and I think Rebecca and Jim and Shelby were all there at Barton College, the Spring Fling or whatever it was called, Spring into Poetry event. And we were talking there as a panel, and we were talking about sharing personal stories in poetry, painful, sometimes family, things like that. And something that Marty said at the time that I've repeated to other people because it just really stayed with me, because he has a lot of poems that some of you'll hear tonight about really deep hurt and abuse and things like that. And when it came Marty's turn to talk, he said, well, the way I feel about it, I'm going to write about, these are my stories and I'm going to write about them. And if somebody else has a problem with that, they should not have done what they did. So I'm going to read Lightning Bug Letter. Very tender poem, I think. Out the window in the darkness above the driveway, between me and the holly tree, a lightning bug has come to write a letter in the gray evening sky. Maybe it's writing to the orange and black monarch I saw yesterday flying over dormant and dying bushes. Excuse me, the lantana is still full of yellow and orange blooms. Maybe the lightning bug is you, unwriting your death, coming back to be with me for one more long, love-filled night. Or maybe it's a goodbye letter. You just can't stop writing, and I refuse to read. Thank you.
Those poems stopped me in my track when we started looking at all the widowers' tongues, the poems. We had heard several of them in our writers group, Christy and myself and Susanna, but seeing them all written together was powerful, and that was one of them. Deborah, thanks for choosing it. Speaking of Christy, I'm coming to you next. Honey, I see you.
Okay. So I met Marty when I came to ECU to go to graduate school, but I had heard about him while I was at St. Andrews doing my undergrad because he had been there before me. So one of the things that I really appreciated about Marty was his sense of humor. And the story that Malika asked me to tell tonight was we were in a writer's group with Marty and Susanna, and Marty's assistant was there. And he was talking politics, and he asked me, had I decided who I was voting for and what I was going to do? And I said, I hadn't decided, and I was on the fence. And he looked at me with a straight face and he said, girl, don't you know you got 4 wheels strapped to your ass? You better pick a side or you're going to fall off that fence. And everybody just broke up because he said it with such a straight face that I don't think any of us knew what to do for a few seconds, and then we all were kind of laughing. So the poem I'm going to read tonight is one I read a lot when I read Marty's poems, and it's called Pot Liquor Promises. The plow point props, the wash house open, sun spins in the wringer, the washboard rust, the clothesline swings, overalls and diapers, flags of the underpaid. An overworked mechanic presses greased elbows into a checkered oilcloth, greens and gravy, pot liquor promises. Thanks.
Good.
Thank you, Christy. Oh, that's such a good story too. From Shelby, I am coming to you. One of definitely one of the people that influenced Marty so much, Mr. Shelby Stevenson. So I've got you spotlighted.
Okay, I'd like to read Marty's Planted to This Earth from Pot Liquor Promises. Planted to this earth, with feet grandfather left me, narrow heels arched awkwardly to flat bony toes, dominant toes, he left me, marching down middles he busted. He turned his garden over to me to plant collards, salad, corn, pepper, hot as the devil's finger. My crooked rose, but at this rose end he appears, turning the plow back, busting wiregrass from the middles, his mechanic's hands black as rubber, his voice hoarse with cancer, coughing, camel after camel to back a breath from his lungs. There will be weeks that go by like decades when I do not miss him like I do tonight. Rain falling and filling his rain gauge, watering down the middles of this July garden. Bell peppers growing warm with moisture, vines running, heavenly butter beans blooming. My son walks on pavement grandfather never knew by fields you can no longer farm. He rides in a grocery cart, not knowing the jingle and jolt of a buckboard or that yellow squash grew under his driveway. He has never seen the white mule come up from the pasture to plow. One day in a long winter, I will teach him when to plant yellow squash. Tell him collards are better on the third day. Show him how to put up pepper vinegar. I will raise my son from seeds a grandfather left me. Teach him to plant his feet in the black soil between these silver cities of concrete. Words are all I have to leave him.
Wow.
Thank you.
I
Very
don't
nice.
think that last line has ever struck me in the same way it just did. Thank you for reading that, Shelby.
Thank you.
Wow. I'm still stunned. Since we don't, let's go to Jim Clark. There, I'll see you now. Hey, Jim, glad you're here.
Thanks, Malika. I've known Marty a long time, as most of you all have. And what Deborah was saying about the walking into April day, one of the things that I always think about Marty is just his incredible energy to get people to do things. And Marcia kind of addressed that too. Maybe because Rebecca and I were at Barton, which was fairly close to him. We were always talking with him about walking into April, or the Gilbert Chapel program, or just the various things that we did at Barton that were literary oriented. And he always had ideas and wanted us to do things and was encouraging us to do things. And that's what I remember so much about him. Because we both grew up in the country with a big family, we talked about poetry and music and family and religion and things like that. So I'm going to read a poem called Baptismal, one of his granddaddy poems. And his granddaddy is a complicated and sort of problematic figure. Baptismal. Granddaddy Jasper turned 78, gave his life to the Lord because he was too old to do anything else. He quit sipping whiskey, stopped smoking when Dr. Aker Long promised camels were going to kill him. Grandmother prayed he would wash away leftover sins at the Weeping Mary Baptist Church. First Sunday in August, they dressed me in a borrowed suit so I could watch Granddaddy drop in the pool of water, blue as a heaven-bound promise. Could water and Pastor Jones' words of redemption wash away bigotry's bruises, cleanse bourbon from bloodshot eyes? Granddaddy disappeared in the blue pool, watched over by the framed Jesus. Neither Jesus, Joseph, Mary, nor the Father, Son, or Holy Ghost could get "God damn it" off Granddaddy's lips. "God damn it" splashed against the edges of the blessed blue sea. Granddaddy flailed arthritic arms against the river of life. "God damn it" rose in echoes out of the worried waters, ricocheted across the beamed ceiling as Henry Jasper Lehman Silverthorne gave himself in his soaked striped suit to the redemption of water. The welted word of God flooded his heart, ballooned his suit pocket, filled over with washed away sin. Granddaddy believed. Yes, Granddaddy believed. He and God were too old to do anything else.
Oh, good.
That's so good.
Oh, this is so much fun to hear. And thank y'all for the poems that you chose.
Am I on?
Yeah, Malaika, we can't hear you right now, but yeah, I think Rebecca, you're on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
To hear
Hear
you,
you.
Rebecca.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't hear
yeah, we
you.
can
I
hear you.
didn't hear you say I was next. I was going to say that John just read one of my favorite beginning lines of all poetry, I think. Daddy's dead, but not tonight. What a great first line. Yeah. So I got to know Marty after Kathy James drove me to his house in Greenville for a little meeting, I guess connected to something we were thinking about doing at Barton with poetry. And then, of course, I worked with him, I don't know, it seems like 20 years or so on the Walking into April. He was really part of the planning committee. Always, as Jim said, had ideas about bringing poetry to Eastern North Carolina. That was his goal. You know, he didn't always find it easy to drive to Weymouth for the Poetry Society meeting. So he was really interested in our having something in the East. And of course, he continued that work even east of Barton. Then he started sending poems to me. He'd always send an email. Would you have time to read a few poems? Usually it was 5 or 6 at the time at the beginning, and I'd give him feedback. I always look forward to it. But he called me his punctuation queen because I would give him direction about punctuation, which he pretended he didn't understand. I miss reading those drafts. Yeah. He did write from to highlight women quite a bit, as we've heard tonight, you know, not just Sylvia, but his grandmother and all those women in Eastern North Carolina who worked so hard and, you know, bore their griefs and were nurturing and so forth. So I've chosen one of the 2 poems in the collected poems about Aunt Janie. One of them is Janie Christmas, where we learn about Janie's alcoholic father and her 3 alcoholic husbands that she divorced. And this one is Aunt Janie Dreams of North. Before I start, I just want to say 2 things I really like about this poem is his imagining her inner life. And he does that with questions. And that strikes me as particularly Marty-like, because he's not really pretending that he knows. He's just wondering. And he uses those questions to wonder about Aunt Janie's dreams. Aunt Janie must have looked out of that back room, across garden, past outhouse, chicken yard, hog pen, and prayed voices she heard on the battery-powered radio were calling her north. She knew they were soap opera voices, but her hands had had enough of the South, tying tobacco, toting the slot jar out on cold mornings. Did she ever play grown-up in front of her grandmother's broken bureau mirror? Did she dream of soldier boys home from war in pressed uniforms, sent to carry her away in shiny cars, away from rust and dust? Did she dream of new shoes, store-bought dresses, never having to smell hog guts stripped clean of corn, never having to eat fatback, leftover biscuits, and chocolate sop for breakfast? She must have dreamed of fancy dishes laid out on linen tablecloths, men who would hold her by her tiny waist and tell her lies, not beat her down in darkness. Is this what Aunt Janie dreamed when she looked north across frozen fields?
Thank you.
Okay.
Very nice, Rebecca.
Pat, I am coming your way.
Hi. Hello.
Hey, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's great to see so many of my longtime poetry friends. And, you know, I really miss the poetry community that you have in North Carolina, and I can't wait to get back to it. Pennsylvania is a little bit different. We're living in a very confusing place called Indiana, Pennsylvania, which is okay because I went to Miami of Ohio, so it all works out. My experience with Marty was an awful lot like John Hoppenthaler's, insofar as Marty and I became kind of regular, sit near each other and socialize with each other at the poetry readings. Most of them, the ones run by ECU. This is my wife, Risa. I'm lucky to have her with me. And she and I were co-directors of the Writers Reading Series at ECU for a few years.
A long time.
It felt like a long time. And Marty was always there, and he was always pleasant. He always had something insightful to say about the readings. And I think that we look forward to seeing each other so we could just kind of talk about serious poetic business. So I'm very fortunate with that. So I'm going to do something a little bit different because I was thinking about what I would like to say about Marty, because I think that he embodies the qualities that we would like to associate with poets. And I just happen to be working on an essay for a magazine, Asheville Poetry Review, and need to go back and dig through Wordsworth's preface to the Lyrical Ballads. So I'm going to bore you with this for a second, because my question is, well, what is a poet? And Wordsworth was rightly concerned about that too. And y'all know the passage so well. A poet is a man speaking to men. Little did he know that his sister was probably as good, if not better, a poet than he was. But the Times would just use the masculine, and I apologize because that's what I'm going to read. A poet, writes Wordsworth, is a man speaking to men, a man, it is true, endowed with more likely sensibility, more enthusiasm and tenderness, who has a greater knowledge of human nature and a more comprehensive soul than are supposed to be common among mankind. A man pleased with his own passions and volitions, and who rejoices more than other men in the spirit of life that is in him. I love that part, in the spirit of life that is in him. And there's more, but I'm going to stop there because I think the poem that I chose to read, Testimonial of Jars, is exactly about the spirit that was in him, in a way that other things might not be. In his own artistic objective, he wanted to give voice to the voiceless and the downtrodden. Probably all read that. What a laudable thing to do. And one of the things that drew me to this poem, first time I read it, was his skill with technique. And some of these things, I could beep at the end of every line, but the enjambment is pretty amazing. And I'm not sure you're going to hear it when I read it, unless I beep, but I'm not going to beep. So, okay, let me read you this poem. Testimonial of Jars, after Hilda Donner. It's in 6 parts. 1. Granddaddy hummed hymns as spirits wormed their way out of the coiled copper. Mason jars brimmed with the sweet elixir of Grandma's Dixie crystal tea. Syrup to calm the soul, bridge the poverty of fatback and biscuits. Jars were a sanctuary to save what should not be thrown away. Phillips and flathead screws, nuts and bolts of every shape and size, nails, 10-penny, and roofing tacks locked in glass prisons. We collected our evenings in jars, fireflies, skeletons of light shimmering in the night, ball jars full of silver ball bearings busted out of Chrysler cases, hurled by push rod slingshots into hooded darkness, secrets silent as mama's salted herrings. 3. I ran my fingers over the cursive signatures, Mason, Ball, Atlas, and Kerr baptized in steaming waters, magic cooked in soda lime glass, watermelon rind pickles, butter beans, better boy tomatoes, crook neck squash, grandma spooned corn, beans, and homemade soup into faithful jars. 4. An empty jar was a coffin for the latest stillborn. The midwife handed the blood-covered fetus to Granddaddy. He dug a hole with his hands by the fir tree and set that coffin jar down in the cradle of ground, laid his work hat at its feet, prayed that vessel into heaven. 5. Tight-jawed men thumped the lids of empty jars, careless with their words, too drunk to drag themselves home to wives who kept supper warm on a Wilson wood stove, hoping to wash away whiskey hunger with sweating jars of sweet tea. 6. On hog-killing day, frost on the ground, wind still as the inside of a gourd, would use a cur lid to work behind the ears of a hog steaming from the vat. That lid did good in fat creases. Mason, Ball, Atlas, and Kerr, big mouths and small. I pressed my ear to the sealed lids, listened for the tongues of the dead. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And you're really hitting on, I think people are echoing each other. One of the things, not only was Marty a fabulous poet who was widely read and very well with the craft, but it's the community building. He showed up. Like, I think all of us have that experience where everywhere we went, there was Marty, steadfast, supportive. I think that's one of the things that I most admired about him. Al, I am coming your way. Why am I not finding you? Does anybody see Al? I know he kept getting booted out. Did we lose him? Oh, because I really wanted to hear A Cure for What Ails Me too. No, Karen, you don't see him either. All right. Well, my sense is that if he shows back up, we'll let him read. If not, if somebody has the book and wants to read A Cure for What Ails Me, that would be awesome. Anybody have trying to look at the page that it is.
He might come back on, Malika.
Yeah,
Malika, would you like to read it since you have it handy?
That's what I was thinking. If I can find it, I'll read it. Or what was Alex going to read?
Yeah, can we move ahead and maybe Al will be back?
That's what I'm thinking. I think Al will be back, is my sense.
Let's see. Alex was going to read Afterward. Yeah.
I hate reading something cold, but we can do that just so that we've heard yeah.
We don't have to do it in order, Malika. We could go on and maybe they'll come back on.
Yep, we're waiting for Al. So that's the last reader, and Al will read Alex's Marty poem, Afterward. And I remember this story because I think actually this poem came from email to you, Marcia.
Yes,
one of the ways that Marty wrote was in his conversations and emails with all the people that he loved to stay in contact with. Shelby, Marcia, Rebecca, and I'm sure I'm missing people, but that's where a lot of his poems, people would point out, you're writing poems to me. Have you gone back to it? And I'm pretty sure this is one that Marcia picked out. It's called Afterward. I didn't know that if you Googled Doodle Hill, it would come up with anything. A small neighborhood north of town where poor white laborers live separated from the black neighborhood by a highway and a graveyard. Where the white folks lived was backed up to the sewage canal. We lived in a house between the neighborhoods. Grandfather Silverthorne built his house in the 20s, made liquor in a shed out back until the 70s. Until I met Shelby, I didn't know you could tell stories like this.
Yeah.
Yes, freaking love it.
Good.
You all are the people that inspired and meant so much to Marty, and you can see it in his work, and I love that. So we'll give Al a moment, but if somebody wanted to respond, it was nice to hear so many Marty poems in different voices by people who love the work. Like I could feel that, and that really got that level of craft and skill and humor that Marty has.
Malika, can I hold up his Marty's collected poems? And if you want to get a copy of this, if you haven't already gotten one, you can get it from Alex Albright.
Perfect. Thank you, Marcia.
Mhm.
And
I put the link in the chat to the R.A. Fountain website where you can get the book.
It's such a beautiful, the way, when we had the picture, I don't know if you can see that, but the way St. Andrew's Press did it, they did the whole picture from front to back. It's a lovely picture that Sylvia took. Here, I'll hold it up again. It's a picture that Sylvia had taken of Marty one time, and we thought it was just so Marty.
yeah, it was a perfect cover. You did a good job getting that one. And I like that they extended it across the entire
I know.
cover.
I know.
That's lovely. Well, we have 5 more minutes. So if someone wants to share another poem or a story, I don't think we got a good story from Shelby, one of my favorite storytellers.
Oh Lord, I'm enjoying this.
Malika, can I
Uh,
say
uh,
I can hear my company in the other room? Could I just say good night?
Oh, of
And-
course, Marcia.
And what a lovely, lovely event this has been. I'm so appreciative of your including me.
Be impossible not to.
Okay.
It was great seeing you, Marcia.
Yeah, I love seeing you all in meetings and new people. And one of the people said they went to Miami University. I'm a graduate of Miami University also, 1960. And my husband as well. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So good night to you all, and love to Marty.
Good night, Marcia.
right.
Hi, Marcia.
I'm coming back to you, Shelby. I'm
Oh,
gonna spotlight you.
oh my. I don't know when I met Marty, but anyway, I told him we couldn't be born in a museum, and that he's telling me about how he grew up around Doodle Hill Swamp and Williamston, and said, you can disguise that and turn it every way but loose, and maybe it'll become whatever poetry is. Here's a poem, Marty's poem. I'll end with this: silence that separates them. Tonight, they are not quarreling over cover, pulling blankets and quilts handed down, mended with generations of blind stitches. Tonight, they rest separate, side by side under a quilt of clay covered with wiregrass. The same grass their children flat hoed. Tonight, they are not quarreling over work money he spent on whiskey or women she heard rumored he slipped round with. Tonight, he does not bicker or bitch about indoor plumbing or how the Kennedys ruined everything Lincoln set free. Tonight, they are not arguing over Cronkite's waxed lip newscast. She is not humming through the hymnal. Tonight, he is not swelling her with child, filling her with fear of stillborn. Tonight, they are resting under a red quilt with a silver satin lining, wrapped in their Sunday meeting specials, tobacco money, duds, Thank you.
Oh, Shelby, thank you.
Thank you, Malika, and it's so wonderful.
Yeah.
Zoom backwards is MOOZ, and this is wonderful. I talked into the wrong end of a telephone. First time ever. It's amazing, but it's
Yes,
lovely
Shelby.
to do this.
You have made my night with the moose. I'm sorry. It's funny to me. It's gonna stick with me.
Who
Michael,
said
you
that?
had your hand raised.
Did Deborah say that? Who said that?
I did. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hey,
Okay.
Michael.
Hi, Shelby. How are you?
Good.
Always in good voice with you. Has anybody read Cardinal yet?
No, jump in if you
Okay.
want to. That would be lovely. Let me
Yeah.
spotlight you, Michael.
Thank you. This is from collected poems of Marty's, and it's called Cardinal. Like a spot of blood against the blue sky, a cardinal perches on the shepherd's hook, where I hang suet and a cylinder of sea feeders I gave Sylvia for her last Mother's Day. The birds are a gift to me now. Her beautiful ashes fill a marble blue urn and rest near one of her crazy quilts in the foyer to welcome visitors. Buddha is there on a table and guards her keepsakes. A cleaned out bookshelf holds her high school portrait, a cross stitch she made for me. Every little corner has its memory of how short a sweet life can be.
Hmm.
Thank
I
you.
love
That's
that
actually
poem.
the perfect one to end on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Yeah, that is beautiful. That was a perfect one, Michael. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What a fabulous group of people to join together and spend time, hearing our friend Marty speak again.
Mhm.
I love that.
Thank you, Malika,
Yeah,
Thank you, Deborah.
for
I mean,
organizing it.
thank you all
Thank you,
for being
Malika and Deborah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great
Thank
seeing
you.
you.
Yeah.
all.
Great to
Together.
see everybody.
Yeah, next week, just a reminder that we're going to have more of a community meeting because the person that was going to read will not be available. So it'll be kind of a party.
Ooh,
Call it a
nice.
wine and poetry. I know. So yeah,
Is-
Karen, one of Regina and
is-
Karen, we had been talking about doing this. We're doing it. So bring a poem.
Like I wish I could. I hope I can. I have to figure. I'll be in Ireland next week.
Oh, that's
Oh, good.
So
That sounds all right.
that's
Change
right.
plans, Karen.
Fabulous.
Change of plans.
I know. You get an earlier flight back, Regina.
oh my
No, we go
God.
with
I
Karen. We
wish.
go with her live from Ireland. I'm
That would
down.
be great.
Yes, I like it.
Well, be well, people.
Thank you.
So very
Thanks so much.
And poems
Thank you,
of
everybody.
waste
everybody.
breath.
Wonderful
Bye.
evening.
Great
Great
seeing
to
you.
see you.
Thank
all.
you. Great to see all of you.
Bye.
So good.
Thank you for this. It was wonderful.
Mm.